Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again from Film Fanatic headquarters. It is 9:28, right in the middle, winter season. It's January 21st. Hope everyone's doing good. So yeah, it's been it's been a pretty cool thing lately. I've been watching so many new movies, and it's been super awesome. And it's probably out of just my time generally, like a lot of the times I spend a lot of time rewatching movies, and then movies that I buy, I check those out for the first time. And I always, I try to do, whenever I see a new movie, I try to do a review for it, either way, or talk about it. I don't always necessarily think of these videos as like reviews, but I definitely do that. That's part of it. But I just generally talk about the films, and from a from just the from the perspective of just really loving films. I mean, that's the coolest thing. When you have that interaction, I find when you get to maybe a movie that you're really really into, and and maybe it's not a movie, say a friend of yours, or a group of friends of yours have not seen, and then they check it out and they dig it, and then vice versa when that happens. When I get films recommended to me, and then I'm like totally floored by that experience. That's one of the coolest things, because you realize everybody's got different tastes, different attitudes around what gets their goat and all those kinds of things. But it's been uh, it's been a pretty awesome year as far as those things go. I mean, we're just easing into 2026 now, but there's a lot of movies coming out that I'm really excited about, and then 2025 and 2024 have been a pretty incredible year for movies. And there's almost every other day I hear about a new movie or two that I need to add to my list of movies that I really really want to see. And a lot of these movies lately, as far as those kinds of films, are brand new releases, movies that have come out, either late last year, 2025, or that are coming out this year, or that have come out and within the last few weeks. So pretty wild, and it's almost hard to keep up with it. I mean, because I know in the past, like a few years ago, it felt as far as newer films that were coming out, it was kind of dismal, and not a lot of things coming out, and it was just like the only thing, or things that seemed to be coming out for a few years, were just another Marvel movie, or another something tied to an IP, and or a reimagining or a sequel to a classic film that for a while, a lot of the times those things were not very good. But now we're in a pretty good space as far as films, and a lot of the films that I have seen lately have been films that I have been recommending to people, and me and one or two other friends that I know that are really into movies, we've had that experience of where we have found ourselves going to see some of these movies two three times in the theater. And that is, as far as going to the theater and doing that doesn't happen that often. And it does, it has been a thing. So it's pretty, it's good testimony to the quality of some of these films. I mean, really outstanding, and such a variety. So I mean, you had like a movie like Weapons, which I think is just an extraordinarily great and fantastic horror film. Definitely the best horror film of 2025. But great, just great things coming out anyway. Anyway, and that being said, I've been watching a shit ton of new movies. The last probably 2 weeks or so, I've been seeing a new movie each night. One or two that I have seen that that I watched recently that I had seen when I was a kid or what have you, or many years ago, and so it's virtually like seeing it for the first time because it's been so long. But most of these newer reviews that I've been doing have been movies I have never seen, and I've just been continually blown away by these movies. So the Film Crypt, amazing um, YouTube channel that I just by chance discovered, and I've been kind of obsessed with it. I've been watching. The channel's got about 80 movies, or I should say about 77 movies to be, I guess, exact. And the majority of the films are all like real low budget horror exploitation movies, but they're amazing. And there's a lot of variety. There's some horror films, there's some slasher movies, there's definitely science fiction, um, more maybe drama based films. I mean, but just spectacular. And the thing that did it for me is the quality of these movies, the actual quality of however this guy or girl downloaded these films or uploaded these films to this channel. They're uncut. They're really good quality. They look they look really awesome. The sound is great, and yeah, just fantastic. A lot of the times I've looked up movies on YouTube, and there you can find some actually good quality movies on YouTube, but and YouTube is the thing that I do the most as far as social media. I mean, obviously I try to do videos for the channel all the time, but I that's usually where like I listen to I discover a lot of bands on YouTube, bands that I hear about. I will find interviews, bands that I end up discovering that I really love their music. I'll look them up online, and it's usually always through YouTube, whether it's studio album or an interview or live performance, which is a big thing that I look for. And then with films, obviously, I'm always checking out film shows. There's so many, and it's usually also the way I find out about new films that are coming out all the time. It's a, if you're a fan, I mean, there's like anything, there's so much stuff, and you have to sometimes sift through it. But um, it's really the main way I guess you could say I stay connected to that, and especially with my habits, I mostly watch older films. Lately, all of the movies I've been watching have been from the 70s and 80s. 70s being my favorite decade. But again, I do watch a lot of new films. I try to stay up on. I just uploaded a video for the new horror film that came out last year that was directed by Chris Stuckman, the biggest YouTube guy that there is, Shelby Oaks. So that will be premiering uh, very soon. I've been setting. I kind of change up how I do things. A lot of times I just upload a video, every day. Lately I've been on a kick of just setting them up, just doing videos like I normally do and just setting them up as premieres, just to kind of break up the system that I sometimes have, and so that's been fun. But I try to stay up on new stuff. So check out that video. It's a pretty long video because it was a lot. When I sat down to do the talk or review of Shelby Oaks, I realized, wait, there's a lot tied to this. So other than just talking about the movie itself, so I was like when I was doing recording the video, I kind of lost track of time, and then I looked at the clock, and I was just like, oh shit. But anyway, I kind of like the longer format videos just because you can kind of maybe take a little bit of a deeper dive. You run the risk of going way off into different territory, but for me, it's all of these things that I kind of talk about are all it's all connected. So today is today's show is going to be about Frankenstein and Frankenstein movies, and specifically this movie that I watched that was actually, which just thinking of it blows my mind. But I watched this movie. It took me 2 days to get through it, only because I started watching it pretty late, like 2 days ago. I think it was two nights ago. I started watching it like 10 o'clock or 10:30, and the movie has a 3 hour runtime, and I was like, I'm not gonna be able to make it all the way through. And I'm like, I'm really loving what I'm watching. I watched about an hour of it. I got till about 11:30, and then I was like, I'm totally loving this movie, but I feel like my focus isn't there, and I want to, like, watch this movie when I'm not tired. So I ended up finishing it up last night, and it's a made-for-TV movie, and it's called Frankenstein: A True Story. It came out in 1970. 73, and it's a British TV movie. And I have to say, I was totally blown away by this movie. Totally blown away by this movie. And so, and I think there were, I probably did see this movie because there were times where I was watching this movie. It was aired originally in '73, on TV. It's a British UK cast. James Mason is in it. Amazing cast, and I'm going to get into the talking about the cast in a bit. But there were times where I was watching this where I was like, I probably did see this as a kid because it was a TV movie, and horror movies that were on television were a big thing. Examples of that for me growing up were movies like one of my all-time favorite horror films to watch on Halloween which I think is probably the best movie to watch on Halloween or during the Halloween season, and it's a TV movie, is Dark Knight of the Scarecrow. That movie's a masterpiece. It was a made-for-TV movie, and it came out in the '80s, and it is such a creepy movie. It's so well done, and a lot of people don't know about that movie, but that was a movie that I used to watch all the time as a kid, and just love that movie to death. It's probably my overall favorite horror movie. It's very low budget. I consider it to be kind of part of the low budget exploitation world, but it's so good. And that was a movie I used to watch all the time as a kid. Another movie which is my all-time favorite. I've talked about this movie so many times. I feel like I can never talk about it enough, and I've done multiple shows on it. My favorite horror exploitation movie of all time, Tourist Trap with Chuck Connors. That movie was not originally made for TV, but that's how it got out there in the world, because when that movie was sent out to get a theatrical run, it the ratings board didn't give it an R. It actually gave it I think a PG or PG-13 rating, and it was because the movie did not have any real gore in it, and it's not a very gory movie. It's actually, more of a kind of crazed psychological experience, and plus it's really like silly and goofy and terrible. But it didn't get distributed. So what ended up happening, it ended up getting picked up by the cable networks at the time in the '80s, and then it was in syndication. I remember seeing Tourist Trap like probably 1,000 times when I was a kid, and so I do, even though it's technically not a made-for-TV movie, it kind of does fit into that totally, because that's how I saw it, and it was always, Tourist Trap was always on television, and I probably saw that movie I don't know, because the movie's like super silly and ridiculous, but it's super kind of weird. It's super weird. It's one of the strangest movies I think ever made. And there's a couple of scenes in that movie where I think are some of the most disturbing scenes ever made in it. And there's no gore. And I saw that movie at a incredibly young age, probably too young. I don't know. And but that's my all-time favorite horror exploitation movie with Chuck Connor's Tourist Trap. It's the greatest. And I bought that about probably 3 or 4 years ago. I bought a beautiful edition of that on Blu-ray, and just amazing. And then another movie that I used to see all the time on cable, and this movie was a made-for-television movie, and that is Steven Spielberg's Duel with Dennis Weaver. It is such an awesome horror movie. It's essentially a guy being pursued by this evil truck driver and this really, driving this menacing truck and he's like stalking him. It's absolutely incredible from the 70s. That was made for television. I think it was the debut, the first film that Steven Spielberg ever directed, but that was a movie I used to see all the time. And getting back to today's top, and I love that movie to death. I think that movie is a masterpiece. Very influential. It was Duel came up in an interview that I saw with Paul Thomas Anderson and Benicio del Toro as a movie that was a really big influence on One Battle After Another, particularly around the amazing car chase scene in that movie, which I was like, as soon as I heard that, I saw that interview before I saw the movie, and as soon as I heard that, I was like, okay, I'm instantly going to go see this movie. That's what did it for me. It said that they named Vanishing Point, which is probably the greatest car chase movie ever made from the 70s, and also Duel, Spielberg's Duel. And when I heard that, I was like, okay, going to see it as soon as I can. So anyway, those are some examples of some TV movies. And watching Frankenstein, the true story from 73, there were times of where I was like, I think I did see this. There was, but again, it's been so long, and I probably saw it when I was like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old or some shit like that. Maybe a little bit older, but there were moments throughout this movie that I was like, okay, that it felt really familiar, those kinds of things. And but watching it last night, I was completely blown away by this movie, like completely blown away. I really think that this movie, and it's a British movie. I did look it up just a little bit ago, and it is available on Blu-ray, which I definitely need to get. I mean, Frankenstein is one of the most iconic monsters of all time. The Universal was you know, the Universal monsters when that was all launched. That was one of the biggest things. Of course, it introduced the world to Dracula, the Wolfman, the Mummy, Frankenstein, the Invisible Man, the Creature from the Black Lagoon. It was our. I saw a thing recently where this guy was talking about the Universal monsters, and he was saying that that was really the first time ever in film history where there was like this, kind of equated to what Marvel has done. This was the first time that a studio launched this kind of massive franchise, which led to, numerous movies based on a particular character. And then other companies, other directors, made their own versions of those films. I mean, so when you think of how many Dracula films there are, how many Wolfman films, and how many Frankenstein movies that there are, it's kind of there's endless amounts of them, and some are good, some are really good, some are not so great, but overall they're mostly all really good. But I have to say, and I'm a huge Frankenstein fan. I mean, definitely, um, and again, it's that story you've heard before, but it was as a kid seeing Boris Karloff play Dracula. That's that was my introduction to the Frankenstein monster. And Mary Shelley's book Frankenstein is a book that I read. I read. It's one of those books. It's one of my favorite books of all time, and it was one of the first horror books I ever, gothic horror books I ever read as a kid. It was like I remember reading. First, it was Edgar Allan Poe. That was my big introduction. As far as literary works in the world of horror, and then from there, it was Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is another book I read every few years, which I just read again recently, and then Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and then H.P. Lovecraft after that, and then Stephen King. So it was a big part of my youth, and I've always, Mary Shelley's book is, it's a masterpiece, and it's something there's a lot of depth to that book. I think almost more than the other ones that I mentioned. And that's a book I revisit every few years. And so I've always been a huge Frankenstein fan. But I have to say, watching, and it blows me away. It just blows me away that this is essentially Frankenstein, a true story from '73. The, the, this British movie, TV movie, is a made-for-TV movie. And I have to say, for me personally, this is the, hands down, without a doubt, no questions asked, the greatest version of Frankenstein ever. Ever. I just think it's so damn good. It's so good because I love that it does. I mean, I love the book so much, and I feel like you're really seeing that on the screen, but yet the movie goes in, at times, goes in very different directions. And it is original because that can be, you know, that can be, there's a lot of examples of where that doesn't work, of where sometimes a director will adapt a book and they will try to stay so close to the book that it just doesn't work. It doesn't, the transmission or translation or something is off. So you have to like adapt it in a different way. I think you need to have some new things to give it a different flavor from when you're, adapting this a classic book or a classic novel, for the big screens. It doesn't work, I don't think, if you try to copy it. And I think that what they did with this film was brilliant because it stays so true to the book. And just from that perspective alone, out of all of the Frankenstein movies that I've seen, and I actually own a lot of Frankenstein movies, I think this one is the closest. But yet it has some incredibly original ideas in it. And it goes into very different directions. Particularly around how Victor Frankenstein, which we haven't really seen Victor Frankenstein be portrayed. I thought what they did with his character was really great and original. And then the design around the Frankenstein monster was really, really great. And some of those sequences of where he comes to the realization, or when he realizes he is a monster, just incredible. I mean, just incredible. And I finished this movie last night. I have to say again, like I just said, this is for me the definitive version of Frankenstein. For me, again, I love. There's so many great movies, in the kind of the film canon or a collection of all of the Frankenstein movies. Like I really love the Hammer films, and those are very different. You can't really compare those two because they're a little bit more campy and a little bit more silly or what have you. But and I love Dracula vs Frankenstein, which is one of my all-time favorite horror exploitation movies. Like I love that movie, and it's such a trashy movie, but I love that movie. And again, totally different kind of a tone. and just totally different style, in a lot of ways. And I just, I saw Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. I saw that in the theater, and that was pretty good overall. I got to see that in the theater on Halloween, and again, that movie had a very limited release, so I was glad that I got to see that on the big screen. And of course, the original Frankenstein films with Boris Karloff, Bride of Frankenstein, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. I mean, classic, movies. But I really, with all those movies being, talked about, and then recently I just watched Frankenstein Unbound, which is a movie directed by Roger Corman, which is really, really awesome, with John Hurt and Raul Julia. Really fantastic movie. Very different, very, very different. And but after finishing this made-for-TV movie, I'm like, nope, it blows all of them away, blows them all away. This is it. And why? And then I was like, why isn't this movie talked about so anymore? I again, I can't. I'm trying to think of how what got me back into this movie. I think it was a couple of months ago. Some one I can't remember what channel it was, what YouTube channel, but it came up. The guy or girl who I was watching, I think it was they were talking about Frankenstein movies, and I think initially this film was or this show that I had seen was you know, a review or something about Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, and it came up, and the guy or girl, whoever it was like talking about other Frankenstein movies, and I remember they like briefly brought up this made-for-TV movie, saying that this was like really really great, and I like kept it in my brain, and then sort of forgot about it, and so um, and then fast forward about 2 weeks ago, I discovered this amazing YouTube channel, which it's my new obsession. It's my new favorite thing. I highly recommend people check out this page. It's called the Film Crypt. It's on YouTube. There's like 77, 78 movies on there. Really good quality transfers of these films. I don't know where they were taken from. I mean, I would say the quality of these movies, and I've been watching a lot of them, is right up there with like a really good quality DVD, basically. Even maybe almost like a higher end DVD, because you have like your standard. You have with DVDs and Blu-rays, you have like your standard versions, and then you have a more like remastered version, and I would say that this is like in between. So they're really good. They're really good quality. The transfers are amazing, and I'm not sure how this guy or girl did that, but fabulous. And I've been just blown away by all of these movies. So when I discovered this channel, and again, I'm one. Maybe I sound like a hypocritical bastard because I'm always like kind of poo-pooing watching movies online and all that shit, and I still stand by that. And again, that I'm an asshole and my taste is up my ass, but
Powering off.
for what it's worth, I still stand by that, because I do think overall like quality is pretty rough. In my past experiences with hearing about a movie over and over again, I couldn't find it, and then I'm like desperate, and then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna find this fucker online, and then I find it, and nine times out of ten, the quality is dog shit. But I will watch it anyway, and then I will order it on Blu-ray if I can. But I generally, I've only done that a handful of times. But I will say with finding this YouTube channel, it's totally the exception of the rule, because I think they're really good quality movies. So I discovered this channel, about 2 weeks ago or so, just randomly. And plus, I had just, broken my TV. My TV went smash smash. So that happened. And then I had suddenly, I was in crisis mode because I'm like, how the fuck am I going to watch movies? For it. And I just ordered a new TV. I got it in and I'm going to set it up really soon. But I've been just enjoying these movies so much that I'm just doing that right now because they're just awesome. And so I got this, got hip to this. Just randomly came across this movie channel because I think the way I discovered it was a movie that I've been really, really wanting to see that I heard even more, the most things about was Mario Bava's Bay of Blood. And I'm like, okay, I got to find this thing. And then I just happened to did a little search on YouTube, and it came up, and it said that this was like an uncut version, and I was like, oh, okay, it's got the full movie, it's free, and it's uncut. So I went to check it out, and then that brought me to the channel, the Film Crypt, and I was just like, holy shit, like whoa. I couldn't believe how many movies were on there, and all these movies look fantastic. And then I watched Bay of Blood, and I was, blown away. Amazing movie. That video for Bay of Blood, Mario Bava's Bay of Blood, has been up for a while. That's been a movie I never seen that movie, and I had always heard that movie is like a legendary slasher movie. So, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And so that video has been up for a while. And then, over the last week or so, searching through the movies, and then I've been watching a lot of movies. I came across. I'm like, what is this movie? It was right on the bottom of the page, way down. At the bottom, I'm like, what is this movie? It's a Frankenstein, true story. And I looked at it, and I was like, wait, 73, and it's 3 hours. And at first, I thought, I mean, there's so much variety also on this channel. All kinds of different genres, all mostly like, old school, like low budget exploitation movies. But I'm looking at this, I'm like, it's 73. Okay, this looks awesome. And I thought it was at first like a documentary about Frankenstein or something. Maybe a documentary about Mary Shelley's book, or I didn't think it was a movie. It was weird. And then just a few days ago, I I finished up a movie and I was going to watch another one. I was like, huh, maybe I'll check this out. And I clicked on it and I started watching it, and I looked at the comments underneath it, and I was like, oh shit, this is that movie I heard about not that long ago. And all of the comments underneath the movie, people were chiming in and saying that this movie is like, an unparalleled masterpiece, just, amazing, incredible, and just all these people were raving about it. So that got me even more excited, and some of these folks seemed, pretty smart, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch it, and I, again, blown away by it. And this movie is everything. Again, I will say that this movie, and again, it's crazy because it's a fucking TV movie. It came out in '73, and it just kind of is. It blows me away. And I have given. I've talked about Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein quite a bit. I've done a couple of shows on it. I know I did a show where I talked about seeing the trailer for it and my anticipation, because I was really excited when I first saw the trailer for Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. I was really excited, and then I don't know. There were certain things that like I saw afterwards or heard about. While I was like, oh, I don't know. And then I saw that it was going to be playing in the theater for a limited time, which I thought was weird. But then I was like, well, I should go see it. And I went in thinking, because I do like Guillermo del Toro, but sometimes I think he I think he's kind of overrated sometimes. I think he is, because I think he is really hit or miss. I don't think he's very consistent. he's done, I think, two movies that are, I think, pure masterpieces when it comes to films. Pan's Labyrinth, that movie is like easily the best thing he's ever done. That movie, from top to bottom, is a pure masterpiece. And then another movie he did is The Devil's Backbone. I think it's one of the greatest kind of ghost story movies ever made. That movie is another just masterpiece. Everything, but everything else since then has been okay or not very good or just all over the place. Yeah, Hellboy's good, and I don't know, but I think he's been all over the place. I didn't like Blade 2. Um, Pacific Rim is not very good. Um, he's made some films that are just kind of not very good, and I just feel like, so I have this mixed bag around because he's made a lot of films. Chronos, which a lot of people, which was his debut, which is kind of like his vampire movie. I do not like that movie. I think that movie is so overrated, and I don't get it why people put that movie on such a high pedestal as this like art house film, and that it's like this really unique vision of what vampires are. I just think that movie is just really boring. And but anyway, so I think it's pretty mixed. I think he can be awesome, and those two films are great. So I went into Frankenstein thinking, okay, I don't know if it's going to be good, but I do feel like it's going to be great to see on the big screen at the Strand in Rockland, which is, as far as local theaters go, it's the best theater around to see a movie. I think there's the Strand, and then there's IMAX, and there's some really great local theaters. Like we're really blessed here. If you're a fan of films and going to the movies, there's a lot of good movie theaters around here. I mean, we've got Colonial Theater, we got Flagship, we got Main Film Center, and we got the Strand. We got Black Bear Cinema. I mean, I'm leaving out a few, all within an hour radius or shorter from where I live. I hear that a lot. Like, there's a few YouTube guys that I watch of where, you know, they don't go to the movies a lot because they don't have very good choices as far as movie theaters go. So we're lucky. I'm very lucky, with that. So anyway, I went in and I thought this is going to be okay, but I did come away thinking that that movie Frankenstein was pretty good. I didn't think it was like, I, you know, I didn't think it was like some people were calling it a masterpiece. I was like, no, it's not a masterpiece. It's pretty good. It's not up there with like Pan's Labyrinth or The Devil's Backbone, but I still felt like there were some things about the movie that were really awesome, and I was really impressed. I was overall glad to see it on the big screen because it's such a visual movie, obviously. But I have to say, and I have recommended it to people for what it's worth, and I'm glad I got to see it in the theater, because then it went right to Netflix, which is so weird to me. And now it's trapped in Netflix hell, and it probably won't ever get. It's probably going to be like years until it ever gets like released on Blu-ray, which is so fucking. It should be on Blu-ray by now, if it was not Netflix. But Netflix, I can't stand fucking Netflix. I, I think, and on one hand, not to go off on a tangent, but I think it's cool that they have given directors, you know, the ability to make movies that they want to make. When certain directors can't get the finance, but it's a catch-22 because then they just like the marketing and they kind of usurp, and then they make the movie only exclusively through their platform, and I think they make some pretty dumb decisions because with what they did with Frankenstein, like by giving it such a limited theatrical run, like I didn't understand that. Like, why wouldn't they let that go for a longer period of time? They would make more money because that movie did generate more and more buzz when it was out. But anyway, that's a whole different topic. And so, but I have to say, after watching this television movie, Frankenstein: A True Story from '73, it diminishes uh, on how I feel about Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. It like it was here before, and after seeing, I would say I would put Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein about here, and then I saw the Frankenstein TV movie, and it lowered it. It lowered my feelings of it because I'm like, this is everything. I and I'm not trashing that movie, but I'm like, this is everything that movie should have been, but could not be. The thing is that's amazing. That's so good about this movie is it's all practical effects. The set design, everything is practical. Like everything is built. It's all handmade. Of course, 1973. This is like fucking decades before CGI and green screen. And as good as Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein looks and feels, because there are things about visually where it looks really really great. This TV fucking movie blows it away. I feel because it's all practical. It's all practical. It's absolutely stunning. The cinematography, the production design, the costuming is absolutely out of bounds. The locations are just unbelievable. I think this movie was all shot in England as well, and it just blows away. Like there's literally, well, it's obvious, but there's no green screen. There's no fucking CGI anywhere to be found. It's all practical. It's all in camera. What you see, like, is what you literally get, and it's incredible. Like I think visually, that's one of the things that people, you know, are saying, when they talk in a positive light about Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. It has been criticized by people, and I think rightfully so, but it also has been praised by a lot of people. It's a little bit split, I think, the reviews for that movie. But one of the things that universally you hear about from critics or people who really like that movie, they say, well, visually it's stunning, and that was the reason that it should have been in the theaters longer, because it's a movie now. It's a movie to see in the theater and all those things. And but after seeing this TV movie, it blows it away. It made it look. It diminished on how highly I regarded that film, and it makes it look like a fucking computer game in comparison. I'm sorry, not to be super harsh, but it's like it's beautiful. I mean, you every scene in this TV movie, you feel like you're in this world. The architecture, the buildings, the costumes, everything, just awesome. And the script is amazing. The script is so good. The story, the the that balance of where they're paying tribute or doing such a great job in staying true to the book, but then having some artistic license and going in different directions and giving you something new. That balance for this movie is perfect, absolutely perfect. And I'm like, why the fuck are people not? And I know I'm an old fucking man and whatever, but why are people not talking about this movie? Because again, you could say the age card or the old, because it's an old movie. But I kind of feel like, well, no, that's kind of bullshit, because you hear people continually, and I think rightfully so, but you hear people continually talk about the original Frankenstein with Boris Karloff, which is obviously much older, and you always hear that brought up. I hear that movie, Abbott and Costello, Meet Frankenstein, The Bride of Frankenstein. I always hear those movies talked about in regards to horror movies, and in particularly around Frankenstein. I always hear those movies. I have not come across one review of Frankenstein by Guillermo del Toro where that does not come up. And I'm like, why is this movie not even mentioned? Because this, I think, as great as those movies are, blows it away. Blows it away. The problem that I had that was so, and again, there are moments with Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein where the writing is amazing. Like it's got some, although it's flawed, I think it does have some amazing moments. And there's certain scenes in the film, particularly around the screen, the writing of the film, the screenplay, where it's, I think, pretty, it's brilliant. But there's also times where I felt like it made me want to cringe in my seat because it was um, so ham-handed and just really silly, but not in a cool way. And the thing that happens with that movie is there's a level of where, not all the time, but a big problem for me around that movie. I've only seen it once. I do want to see it again eventually, but I don't really even care. I care less about that now just because of after seeing this movie because it's such a masterpiece. Um, there's a problem with Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein of where it's. I mean, yeah, I think we all going into it, we all kind of know the story. It's like Dracula or Nosferatu. Like we all kind of know what's going to happen, but we still like want to, maybe be brought into new areas and maybe have something that's unique about it. So it's not so predictable, and maybe something original about it because that's tough to do. A story that's been around for close to 100 years that's been retold many times. But this movie, I think, suffers because, well, it's really predictable. But there's this thing of where, as a viewer, I felt like every character or the way the story is structured, you're like it feels like your hand is being held, and you're kind of being brought into each scene or each chapter of the film, chapter of the story of like, oh, this is where you start really thinking, Victor Frankenstein's really an asshole. And then this is where you should start feeling empathy towards the monster. And then this is where you should feel the tragedy. As opposed to like just letting the story unfold and you kind of making your own conclusions as a viewer, not being like handheld and being told essentially throughout the whole film of how you should feel. And it's like really on the nose and it's really juvenile at times because of that. Where like a kid, you know, like a parent talking to their, talking down to their kid because they're not old enough to understand, what they're doing. It's kind of like that throughout the whole movie. So it makes the story, even though, like, again, we know the story, and what's going to happen, but it makes it so like by the numbers and so predictable. Granted, there are some really good moments where the dialogue is very good, but I think there's too much of that. Let's lead your hand, through the park kind of thing, because you will get lost. You cannot find your own way. There's too much of that in the movie, and the thing with this TV movie with Frankenstein is there is absolutely no. Your hand is not being led at all. You're the characters are all fully fleshed out. You're able to make your own conclusions to what's happening, and you have to invest the time and figure out things on your own. And you're never being told or being kind of thumped in the nose at any moment that, oh, this is how you should feel. No, the story will tell itself because the writing is good. And I feel like this movie totally nails that in comparison to, say, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. And it's crazy when I think of, like, this came out in '73, and it's a fucking TV movie. And then, Guillermo del Toro's 2025, and it's got this, millions of dollars thrown into the budget. I mean, it's wild to me. It's testimony to me. It's an example of like really what if you strip everything away, budgets, and you strip away, maybe the popularity of certain actors or the directors or whatever it is, technology. To me, it just strips away everything and just is like, oh, film and the creation of a movie is just about telling a story. That's it. That's all it is. Everything else is just like, extra, or like the frosting on the cake or what, or the candles on the birthday cake. That's all it is. But the base is just that, and it was like yeah, just fantastic. And the cast for this movie is absolutely fantastic. Frankenstein, a true story. Frankenstein, the true story. 73. Again, I'd be hard pressed. The only way it would be, again, I really want to get this on Blu-ray, and I just saw this morning. I was looking it up. Uh, there is a beautiful Blu-ray edition of this film out that's available, which is amazing. So I got this. I got a gift card for Christmas from Santa Claus, so I think I'm definitely going to buy it. I think it's hard to find. Otherwise, I don't think this is a movie you're going to find in the store, um, particularly at Bull Moose. And as much as I love Bull Moose, it is a pain in the ass to order movies through them. Or to order CDs. So I try not to order anything through them. Obviously you can go. I mean, there's a billion boutique labels out there that are all great. You can go to their sites and order this movie probably. But I saw that there is a beautiful Blu-ray edition of this movie, and that's probably this is probably the movie I want the most. But other than that, it's for free on the Film Crypt YouTube channel, and the quality is immaculate, immaculate. So, I'd be hard pressed to see if it's going to be even that much. I mean, it's going to be. I'm sure it's going to look fantastic, but it's a really good quality version of this film. Again, I'm just blown away that this came out in '73. It was directed by Jack uh, Jack Smite. I guess all this is an all British cast. James Mason is in this film. Iconic actor, an amazing actor. He's amazing in this. He plays such an evil bastard in it. He's so great in this movie. Um, James Mason, Leonard Whiting, and David McCallum. Uh, just fantastic. The actor who plays the Frankenstein monster is absolutely incredible. There's this scene in the movie of where, and the movie does a really interesting thing as far as how they portray the monster, because they do this thing of where after Frankenstein's monster is kind of created. Well, I don't want to give anything away because there's certain things about this movie. Again, it stays really true to the story and the source material, but then it does things that are really wild and really unique and really different. And there were a couple of moments in this movie where, honestly, my jaw dropped because I was like, "Wow." Um, they really took some chances with this movie, and it's really dark, it's really violent, and it's a fucking TV movie. I think it's darker and in some ways more violent than any of the other films. And it really has this awesome gothic vibe throughout. The other thing, one of the things I did not really like about Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein was on how Dr. Frankenstein was portrayed, of where, yeah, and again in the book he is, uh, you know, kind of this psychopath, obviously, but he is a really kind of complex character. He's not one dimensional. He has there's a lot of other things going on within his life or his character. And the portrayal of Dr. Frankenstein in this movie is so awesome because you're you I found myself feeling like total empathy towards him, and I kind of cared about him, but then at the same time I was like repulsed and kind of horrified by him at the same time. It was all these different feelings. In Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, the portrayal of Dr. Frankenstein is like right from the beginning to the very end is like this guy is just a fucking asshole and I hate him. I want him to die. I want him to die a horrible death. Like 10, 20 minutes into it, I'm like, this guy should just die a horrible death because he's just a fucking prick. He's a psychopath, but he's a prick. I never at one point felt like, oh wow, you know what? I kind of have some empathy towards this guy, or I'm kind of understanding where he's coming from. No, I was like, this guy is just a fucking asshole, and that was the whole feeling. And that's not how Mary Shelley wrote his character in the story. I mean, he's pretty complex, very dark and fucked up, and a psychopath. But you do have empathy towards him because he has lots. There's lots of reasons and things that pushed him in that direction to where he became um, you know more evil per se than the monster itself that he created. And I felt like Guillermo del Toro did not do that with the story. With this TV movie, they nailed that. They totally nailed that to where he's like this multi-layered, very complex character, and you're enthralled by him, but then you're also like repulsed by him at the same time, and it's so great. And they did the same thing with the portrayal of the monster in this movie because there's this whole scene of where the monster. This doesn't give anything away, but so I'm trying to be very careful how I say it. But there's a scene of where basically the monster is created, and Dr. Frankenstein realizes that this experiment has gone horribly wrong. So, in order to um, somewhat keep the truth away from the monster, Dr. Frankenstein smashes all of the mirrors and all of the glass in the building, in the laboratory, so the monster cannot ever see what he actually looks like or what he's becoming. And there's a scene of where the monster eventually finds this broken glass and he's able to see his reflection of who he really is and what he looks like. And it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And the performance is absolutely unbelievable. Yeah, it's amazing. The film score is absolutely stunning for this movie. The music is incredible. I can't recommend this movie enough. It's it's without a doubt, no questions asked, my favorite version of Frankenstein ever made. And it, as good as some of those other movies are that I've mentioned, and some of them are obviously classics, it it blows them it blows them all out of the water completely. I can't recommend it enough. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Peace.